Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3869 AN. Today's date is March 27th, 2026, and the title of the episode is The End of the Fed is Near. Is Trump preparing a new currency for the country? Now, you know what's very interesting? If you're like me and you're getting to that age where your body just feels sluggish and off all the time, then listen up. Because Dr. Josh explains that most of the time, this is caused by clogged liver. You probably already heard about how important your liver is for detoxification, digestion, and energy levels. But here's the thing. Most people have no idea how clogged and overburdened the liver actually is. Eating processed food, drink, and even stress, these things can take a toll, leaving your liver clogged. And it's important not to let this go unchecked because your liver is the most important organ in your body, being responsible for the proper function of nearly every system in your body, from digestion to metabolism to detoxification. Essentially, a healthy liver equals a healthy you. That's why Dr. Josh, a practicing doctor with over 25 years medical experience, formulated a special liver supplement called Ultra Liver that acts like a deep cleanse for your entire body. He told me that Ultra Liver just crossed over 500,000 bottles sold and has received thousands of 5-star reviews from happy customers and patients. So say goodbye to chronic fatigue, bloating, and skin, and say hello to renewed energy, clear thinking, and a body that is operating 100% again. And this is powerful stuff. You're not going to get results like this from any random liver supplement. Dr. Josh put his 25 plus years of experience into Ultra Liver to make sure that it actually does what it's supposed to. So if you're ready to unclog your liver and flush the dangerous toxins that are sapping your energy and preventing you from losing weight, just go to tryultraliver.com/X22 to get your hands on Ultra Liver today. By the way, it's your lucky day because Dr. Josh is running a summer sale where you can get up to 50% off Ultra Liver for a limited time. But this special offer is only available through our link for our audience. The link is right below this video in the description box. Do yourself a favor and go click it and take back control of your liver health today. That is tryultraliver.com/X22. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, they can see what Trump and his team are preparing to do. And you can see that the deep state players, the central banker, they're already starting to use information to try to convince people that something's happening when it really isn't. And it looks like the powers that be have now approved Trump's signature on U.S. currency, which is very, very interesting because, again, if you're going to bring back the entire system, remove the central bank, issue a new currency. When I say new currency, we've gone through many different currencies in this country. And you have to remember the currency that we're using now is the Federal Reserve note. It's not the U.S. dollar. And remember, this is a product of the central bank system, and the central bank system is loaning it to us with interest attached. So you really don't own that piece of paper or the blip on the computer. You owe interest on that money, which goes back to the Federal Reserve. And that's what you've been paying taxes to. You think you've been paying taxes to keep everything operational. No, you haven't. They borrow to keep things operational. They borrow to create fake studies. They borrow for money laundering. But once again, you could see that Trump now, he's preparing to end the Fed. And I do believe he's preparing the country for a new currency. And he's putting all the pieces and everything into place. And you can see step by step, he's doing more and more to show us this is the direction that we're heading in. And you have to remember that he needs to get rid of the bloat that the central bank, the deep state players have created over time. And that's why he's removing a lot of the employees within government. Actually, he's going to shrink government down quite a bit. I think it's going to be so small that people are going to be absolutely shocked. And a lot of the jobs, well, I think AI is going to be able to do a lot of those jobs, those multitasking jobs that you really don't need people for. So I think this is going to actually really shrink down the government. And you're going to see that all the money laundering and all the fraud and everything else that has been taking place, that is going to be coming to an end. So once you start to get rid of all of that, can you then have the external income system then take care of the country? Absolutely. And think about it. All the states then, for them, depending on the federal government, they're going to have balanced budgets. They're going to have to say, okay, listen, we can't have all these things the way we had it before because, again, we're not getting the funds we had. We can't push these fake agendas. We can't push these fake programs. We can't launder anymore. This is going to change everything moving forward. Remember, Trump now is taking what we had, which was a criminal enterprise run by the private West central bank system, and now he's shifting it into a system where there's checks and balances. And I do believe to do this, you need to get rid of the Federal Reserve in the end, and you need to remove their currency. And it looks like Trump is now heading down that way. We'll be talking a little bit more about this a little bit later. But first, let's talk about the new study that came out about net zero. And it looks like net zero activists, they are stumped by the new evidence showing there's no link between CO2 and temperatures over the last 3 million years. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of individuals that are going to reject this. And there's a study that is out there called Broadly Stable Atmospheric CO2 and CH Levels over the past 3 million years. And basically, this was produced by 17 American-based scientists. So I guess the science isn't settled. I guess they're still reviewing everything. Remember, they wanted you to think the science was settled because, again, they didn't want anyone checking into it. If they say the science is settled, they could just say, listen, there's no reason to look at it anymore. But science is never settled. And they've come to find out that everything that we were told is a complete and utter lie. And I don't think people are really surprised about that. And you can see that every step of the way, Trump is going to be using all of this to shut down the rest of the Green New scam. Everything's being shut down right now, and you're going to see that this is going to spread worldwide, and you're going to see that there are going to be a lot of countries now that are going to be jumping on board of what Trump is doing, and they're going to back out of what they were trying to do, just like they backed out of the vaccine passport. The same thing is happening right now. And you're going to start to see a lot of the European Union nations, you're going to start to see them move in a completely different direction because I think the writing's on the wall right now. Just like the writing's on the wall right now showing that, hey, a lot of these green new scams that they were pushing, it's just a money laundering outfit. Wall Street Apes put this out and said, head of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, confirms many of the NGOs that received the $20 billion sent by the EPA were created right before the money was sent. These NGOs were created for the first time, many of them just to get the money and then pass it along. They're just pass-throughs. Joe Lange responded and said, this has always been the case. If not NGOs, then defense contractors and coming ice age global warming climate change nonsense. Our entire debt is based on fraud and stolen taxpayer money. Trump is not going to make the taxpayers pay it back. There's an executive order on the books that magically got renewed every year under Biden too. Tariffs instead of taxes. It's coming. And I do believe that is absolutely true. But you can see, since we're now involved with Iran and there's a mission going on, and yes, oil prices have gone up a little bit. No, are they bad as Biden? No. And you could see that the D's, they're trying to capitalize on this. Of course, the Federal Reserve is trying to capitalize on this. But every time they try to do this, it completely and utterly backfires on them. Senator Mark Kelly, remember the treasonous senator that told the military not to go along with Trump's orders, even if they're illegal? That's interesting. He said, this is from the gas station in Phoenix yesterday, $6.49 for a gallon of gas, all because Trump started war with no plan and no idea how it would affect everyday Americans. I'm fighting to suspend the federal gas tax to bring families some relief, but what they really need is a president focused on lowering their costs. Well, think about it. Doesn't Nevada, Arizona get their fuel from California? Yeah, it does. The U.S. Oil and Gas Association decided to respond to him and said, hello, Senator. This has already been pointed out, but I'll allow us to re-emphasize that. 33% of Arizona gasoline, including the entire Phoenix refined products market, comes from California refineries via pipeline. With California Democrat energy policy forcing the closure of major facilities, the dependency will mean higher prices and tighter supply ahead. Arizona has 0 refineries of its own. With your military background, you of all people recognize that recent events have shown how unwise it is to allow an economy to be at risk of foreign choke points halfway across the world. Arizona is no different. We recommend Arizona decouple itself from California energy policy as soon as possible. Thank you for you sharing your views. We'll certainly keep them in mind. And remember, California is also going, I think on April 1st that we mentioned yesterday, they're going to a summer blend. So we're going to see a lot of things happen in California and Arizona. And yes, the gas prices are going to be much, much higher there. And who's to blame? No, it's not Trump, because you're going to see what's going to happen when the mission is over. Gas prices go back down to where they were. you're going to see California, Arizona, Nevada, you're going to still see those gas prices still very, very high. And once again, this is going to blow them out of the water. Again, this is what they do because they don't want anyone to know the truth of what's really happening. And if you look at what's really going on with the fuel prices, you could see even with the mission in Iran, it's not as bad as Obama. It's not as bad as Clinton. It's not as bad as Biden. It's not as bad as Bush. It's not as bad as Obama. Not as bad as any of these people. Carissa put this out and said, for the panicans, the paid operatives, the naysayers, and the uninformed, don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. Historical oil prices over $100 per barrel. Trump 18 days, approximately 18 calendar days, with daily WTI spot prices above $100 per barrel during Trump's current administration from January 2025 to now. Biden, under his administration, 168 days, approximately 168 calendar days, with daily WTI spot prices above $100 per barrel during Biden's administration from January 2021 to January 2025. Trump, 0 days in his first term from January 2017 to January 2021. Obama, 410 days, approximately 410 calendar days, with the daily WTI spot prices above 100 per barrel during Obama's administration from January 20th, 2009, all the way up to 2017. Bush, 225 days, approximately 225 calendar days, with daily WTI spot prices above $100 per barrel from 2001 to 2009. So let's see, we've had 18 days and people are freaking out. Actually, Trump lowered the fuel prices from Biden. They went up for 18 days. Hey, you know what's interesting? We've all seen the headlines about those miracle weight loss shots, but the 2026 data is officially in, and it's a wake-up call. A major analysis revealed that once people stop the injections, they regain an average of 60% of their weight within a year. Even worse, most of the gain is pure fat, but the muscle they lost stays gone, leaving them with a crashed metabolism and a body that's functionally older than when they started. That's why I'm obsessed with today's sponsor, GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of using needles to override my system, it uses clinically studied plant-based ingredients like Metabolic to help my body naturally boost its own hunger control signals. I get the same fullness and fewer cravings, but without the scary side effects or the metabolic rebound. It supports my goals while protecting my muscles so I can actually keep the results for good. To celebrate Valentine's Day, get 50% off GLP-1 Elevate at trimwithx22.com. Every order includes a complete support bundle with a free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping on subscriptions. Head over to trimwithx22.com now to claim your 50% discount before it expires, or just click the link in the description. And in the next couple of days, when all this is said and done, you're going to start to see the fuel prices start to come down. You're going to start to, probably in May, you'll probably start to see the fuel prices come down in May, June, July, and then it's going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as we get closer and closer to the midterms. You have to remember what Trump did. He actually went ahead with this mission earlier in this year to actually counter everything the D's, the deep state players, and everyone else is saying, because once everything's said and done, and Trump gains control of the oil in this region by having the other nations around that area control the Strait of Hormuz, you're going to see the fear tax move completely removed. You're going to see the fuel prices come way, way down, and everything is about to change. Just like it's changing in regards to the tariffs with the European Union. It looks like Trump keeps winning every single day. Inevitable West put this out. The European Parliament has voted in favor of removing all tariffs on United States industrial goods. So basically, they just voted in the European Union to remove the tariffs on the U.S. So the vote passed 417 in favor to 154 against, with 71 abstentions. This advances the EU side of the broader Turnberry Agreement, trade deal negotiated last July 2025 between the European Commission and the Trump administration. Now, this was the Parliament adopting its negotiating position. The text will need approval from the EU member states and final Parliament, which is expected anywhere from April to June of 2026. It's a very big step forward, but again, it still has other processes to go through, but this is a really good sign that 417 were in favor and 154 were completely and utterly against. Kimberly Auer put this out and is pointing to a Q post, and it posts 1702 July 25th, which is very, very interesting because when are they going to vote? Between April and June, and this is in July. If you read the second line, it says zero tariffs, U.S. to the EU. That's very, very interesting. It looks like that is all coming true. But Elizabeth Warren, she has a plan to help the wealthy. And once again, you could see that these plans, they don't work. Taxing the wealthy never works because, again, it destroys the socialist system because you think the wealthy stay in that area. No, they move out of the area. Then everyone else is taxed. And then the entire system collapses. And then capitalism started again. And then the whole process is repeated because they keep trying. But this is what she put out. Today, I'm introducing my wealth tax. And more than 50 members of Congress are joining me. It's time for the government to start working for American families, not just the ultra rich. She says if we tax rich people like this, for every dollar owned above 50 million, they pay 2 cents. And for every dollar owned above 1 billion, they pay 1 cent more. We could pay for universal child care. Wait a minute, didn't they use that to launder money? Lower housing costs by building millions of new homes. Well, let's see. Didn't we lower the housing costs when we got rid of the illegals? Slash child poverty. Well, that's what the Federal Reserve causes, child poverty, because inflation, and it actually creates a problem. Expand Medicare. Wait, didn't they expand it to illegals and it cost the American people a lot more money? Provide free community college. Wait, weren't they giving free college to the illegals? And this is why it drove up college costs? Interesting. Cynical Publius responded to this and said the following. The idea of taxes on unrealized capital gains for illiquid assets is the stupidest economic policy ever dreamed up. It would be an economy destroying measure that would basically eliminate the concept of privately owned companies with equity not traded on the public markets. The death of a private company would result in the death of the major innovation engine that has made the USA the greatest economy in the world. Had such a scheme existed 50 years ago, Apple, Meta, Google, Tesla, SpaceX, etc., would never have come into being because they would have never been able to raise VC startup capital. If this law were to come to pass, unemployment will skyrocket, innovation will plummet, standards of living will be reduced to third world levels, and capital will flee offshore. The nation will tumble into decades-long depression, and none of the social justice ideas Big Chief Lizzie is speaking about will be affordable or even possible. This is the worst economic idea anyone has suggested in any of our lifetimes. But don't worry, Big Chief Lizzie will still get rich off the campaign contributions from the big banks and publicly traded companies who will be the few beneficiaries of the nation's destroying idea. And he's absolutely right. Because once again, everything that they have done is the same thing that they've done in the past. Hey, we're going to implement the Federal Reserve. Don't worry, we're not going to tax anyone. We're only going to tax the wealthy. Everyone else doesn't have to worry about it. What happened? Everyone else had to worry about it. Then the system, when they took us off the gold standard, continually broke down. How about we remove all the fraud, we remove all the illegals, we remove the Federal Reserve, we go back to sound money, and we stop all the kickbacks to politicians. Let's see how the economy works out then. I'm sure we're going to have a very, very strong economy, and we're going to remove all those barriers that she has been talking about. It's that simple. But it looks like we might be headed in that direction, which I do believe we are headed in that direction. Because President Trump is adding his signature to U.S. currency, making an historic first where a sitting president's autograph will appear on all denominations of bills. The Treasury Department is developing new printing plates for this change, which is expected to take effect in the coming months and remain until another administration decides otherwise. So that's very, very interesting. So this is going to appear on the pieces of paper. Now, eventually what I think Trump and the Patriots are doing, I think they're shifting everything over, slowly but surely. Now, it doesn't mean since he has his signature on the pieces of paper, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we have a new currency. I do believe in due time, this is what he's prepping for. And Ripcord points out something very interesting. The article that came out in 2020, I think maybe a lot of people remember it, maybe people don't, that Trump moved the Fed into the Treasury in March of 2020. And it's one of the only media stories you can find on the subject, Within the story, the author says, meet your new Fed chairman, Trump. So we know that the Federal Reserve is going to be restructured. We know that this is going to occur. And it seems like the deep state players, they're trying to get ahead of all of this because they're putting out very, very interesting stories right now. And actually, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent basically debunks what the Financial Times put out. FT exclusive, it says, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent discussed tightening the U.S. Treasury's oversight of the Federal Reserve by adopting elements of the Bank of England's model. Well, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had some words, and he says the following. By publishing this explicitly false story, the FT has officially become tabloid trash for market participants. Despite my direct, on-the-record denial of ever having advanced, explored, or espoused the idea that Chancellor Bank of England statute serving as a prototype for a Treasury-Federal Reserve relationship, FT journalists manufactured a story with the headline, Scott Bessent praised Bank of England as model for a tighter oversight of the Federal Reserve. These pathetic journalists have clearly fabricated a story to give the impression that both I and Trump, the Trump administration, are setting about restructuring the relationship at a time when Trump has launched an unprecedented assault on the world's most important central bank. Their assertion is based on vague statements from unnamed financial industry executives familiar with the matter. In short, FT has literally manufactured an entirely fake policy position for me and the administration, other than furthering a maliciously false narrative of dysfunction and decisiveness. It baffles the mind as to why they would shred their already diminished journalistic credibility. Over the past 10 years, I've written more than 20,000 words opining on the Federal Reserve decision, personnel structure, and modification. Nowhere have ever mentioned this ridiculous notion. The governor's letter to the chancellor have proven to be useless and perfunctory device. There's much to be said about the storied Bank of England, but any recreation of its operating framework on the side of the Atlantic has never been contemplated. They have brought irredeemable shame to their parent organization, Nikkei Inc., with whom I had previously had excellent relations. In 2025, I laid out a comprehensive 6,000-plus word review of each and every policy reform that I believe should be adopted by the Federal Reserve. So basically, they're putting this information out there, and you have to ask the question, why are they doing this? They know something's about to happen, which is going to be very, very interesting. But Rob Cunningham says the following. Let's make 4 bets, America. Our new 2026 U.S. Treasury currency signed by President Donald J. Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will not include the words federal or reserve or note anywhere. An Egyptian period, an all-seeing eye, a reference to any NGO. I'll give 1,000 to 1 odds. Takers? That would be very, very interesting. And if that is the case at this point in time, this will definitely show us that we're moving at a much quicker pace to where we're going. Now, just because it doesn't do that doesn't mean anything. But if it actually shows that he removed the Federal Reserve note, it means that he is very, very confident in the parallel economic system, and we're moving towards the gold standard, moving towards the Constitution at a much, much quicker pace. And I do believe they probably did this at this point in time, number one, because of what's going on in Iran, how he's freeing up energy, how the parallel economic system is running very, very smoothly, and more currencies coming in. I do believe he's getting everything prepared. The Genius Act is passed. The Clarity Act is coming. And I do believe once this all occurs, he's going to have all the ammunition he needs, especially after we win the House and the Senate, because this will give him the leverage that he needs to go after the Federal Reserve. So the question is he preparing for that? It's starting to seem that way. But Rob Cunningham also put this out of the new system that we might be going into. And he says the following. Federal Reserve notes were legal tendered debt instruments manufactured and distributed by the privately created Rothschild cartel, which built a script system designed for control and wealth extraction from taxpayers based on false legal claims via a bankruptcy process in 1871, using Fed Corporation trustees, judges, and Fed Corporation agents, politicians, to 1, accept payment against our individual birth certificate, trust bonds, and 2, double dip by demanding citizens also pay, settle with Federal Reserve notes. That has been one elaborate fraud against all humanity. The Fed's double-entry, opaque system that permitted insider institutions to maintain multiple sets of books, ledgers, with reconciliation delays has been eradicated. Their 3-card Monty sleight of hand tricks that robbed us blind and soaked us in in counterfeit debt without our mutual consent, transparency, ability to verify, audit, or reconcile is dead. Below is how our new 2026 DLT and honest money atomic value settlement system replaces the Rothschilds' fractional reserve lending, double payments, debt, and usury interest, wealth extraction, Ponzi scheme system. In a properly designed DLT environment, all transactions can be cryptographically verified by authorized participants at the same time, reducing ambiguity about who owns what and when final transfers occur. Tokenization is the way to remove separate messaging, multiple ledgers, time delays, and lack of atomic reconciliation without public clarity and verification. Instead of separate systems for messaging, custody, clearing, and settlement, tokenized deposits, reserves, and other claims will be exchanged on a shared infrastructure that keeps one universal record of trustless accounting that can always be verified the world over. DLT enforced mechanics based on sovereign governance at the nation-state level using verifiable, inspectable code that upholds a pure standard of immutability and trustlessness based on mathematics, free will, mutual consent, and no favoritism among participants, returns power to we the people. One-to-one asset backing plus clearly disclosed reserve ratio set, strict limits on rehypothecation, on ledger proof of reserves and liabilities, legally enforceable final settlement, and a clear distinction between custody assets and lending assets. The DLT-based monetary system will replace much of the friction, opacity, delay, and reconciliation theater of the Fed system by allowing tokenized money and real-world assets to automatically settle on a shared infrastructure with clear audit and ownership records. The deepest first principles distinctions is this: legacy Fed system, trust us, reconcile later; new DLT system, verify now, settle instantaneously. The true genius of this new civilization architecture is full clarity. It's almost as if a stable genius has been leading a long-term plan for over a decade with purpose for the benefit of all humanity, like a boss. And yes, we're going to be seeing a whole new system. And I think this is why Trump and the Patriots are setting everything up and preparing the country. Step by step, Trump is putting the pieces into place to do what? To prepare the country for what is coming. And the only way to do this is to build a new system while the old system is running. Because you don't knock down the old system and have chaos and you remove the wealth, you remove the power of the United States. You keep that system while you're building a new system. It's almost like when you're going to build a new bridge. If you're going to build a new bridge, you don't knock down the old one and stop all traffic. You leave the old one up and you build the new one next to it. When the new one is finished, then you knock down the old one. That is what Trump is doing right now. And you could say goodbye to the Fed. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.